Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. You know, we keep winning and then we keep getting setbacks. And it never fails that the administration, the Biden administration specifically, is going to go after anything and everything they can to stop people from using their 2A rights. So the Biden administration has closed off 1.1% of the Sonoran Desert National Monument to recreational target shooting. Now, this is the opening salvo of what is a limit on rights. So, coming from the Southwest, there is not a lot of places you can shoot. Most of the land in northwest New Mexico is BLM land, and if they start getting really heavily handed at doing this, they're taking away your ability to go out and shoot. I understand some of the concept here that they're trying to make it safer for people to use some of the recreational land. But when you're talking about places like New Mexico or Arizona, where there are millions of acres of land that recreational people can use, and there's very finite amounts where you can shoot safely, where it won't be anywhere near people or specifically homes or trails or anything like that. For you to close off areas, you're blocking off shooters from having the ability to exercise their right. Now, where I was saying the safety aspect, I understand that safety aspect of trying to keep people safe. I've seen places where, in New Mexico, specifically in my area, where people went and shot that had trails for motorcycles or bike riders. And that's not a good plan to have them coexisting in the same area, because people that aren't in the 2A, they're awfully ignorant, and they may hear the gunshot, but they're not paying attention to what they're doing when they're going across ranges. Now, this one particular range I saw was graduated out to 1,000 yards, and it had targets up to 1,000 yards. But in between those targets, there were several crossing trails where people were using them for dirt bikes. And I'd been out there one of my friends found this range, and he's like, hey, let's go try this out. And we went to try it out, and we had to stop like 3 or 4 different times until I finally said, dude, this isn't safe. And when I say that, you know, it's not unusual to be out shooting on BLM land and have someone cruise through your area on a dirt bike or a side-by-side. That's different than what I'm talking about. But if there's established trails that kids are using or parents are using to take their kids out and use their ATVs, and they cross your shooting range, that is a bad plan. Your range needs to move, okay? And I say that just because kids are stupid. They are very unaware of stuff. We want to introduce them to the 2A so they understand these concepts of safety and security and being a good steward of the land and being a good steward of the 2A in general. But we don't want to introduce outright danger, and this is an outright danger. So I understand some of the concepts here. But forcing people to go to shooting ranges, that does 2 things. It limits your ability to go out and exercise your right at any time, because shooting ranges usually have a fee that becomes cost prohibitive for the poor. It also becomes cost prohibitive because of time, where these ranges are located and their hours of operation aren't always conducive to people taking their families out or themselves out to go out and, train a little bit. But what I'm getting to, the other part of this, is that this is just another way that they can try to whittle away at the 2A to keep people away from exercising their rights. Because we've given up so much of land to the public in general, it makes it federal land and makes it state land. And when you have that happen, you have the ability of a tyrannical government looking to limit your rights any way they can, looking at things like this to say, hey, this is another way we can limit their ability to exercise their rights, because we don't believe they should have them. Now, when I say be good stewards of the land, what I mean is if you take your targets out, pick them up. There's a lot of this stuff. If you're shooting glass, why? Because you're leaving crap behind. You're leaving trash behind. New Mexico specifically is a very beautiful state. As much of it is high desert and that there's a lot of open areas, trash does blow in from the cities. I get that, but there's no sense in going out and just throwing more trash on the land that's out there. Pick up after yourself, That's just being a good two-way steward. Take your targets, pick up your brass, try to do that anyway, and you'll be a better person for it. We're supposed to be the best stewards, the best representation of the 2A when we go out. And if we're safe, and we're always showing that we're safe, and there's less of a chance that this will gain traction. But the more we leave the trash behind, or the more we make it an eyesore, the more we have those instances where we're not paying attention to who's using the land with us, the more that we give ammunition to idiots like the Biden administration or our governor in New Mexico to actually side with these people to shut off public lands so you can't use them. And our public lands are everyone's lands. They're just like parks, They're for everyone to go out and use them and use them for recreation, to enjoy the beauty, to enjoy the splendor that's out there. And there's nothing like going to a open area where you can safely shoot and not have to worry about anyone. And if they get their way, they're going to close that off to you. So be cognizant of what's happening. Be cognizant of what's going on the 2A. And, definitely like, share, and subscribe the New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union, because I'll bring issues to you like this, sometimes in a very abbreviated fashion, like today. Last night I didn't drop an episode because I knew I was going to drop one midday, mostly because I got home late last night doing a ton of other things. I'm trying to get my house back in order, so to speak. I was checking on some friends who have some family in Ruidoso. If what's going on in New Mexico right now, there's a giant wildfire in Ruidoso, and that leads to this type of discussion. I don't know what started the fire in Ruidoso, but if you're using those tannerite targets, or you're using really hot brass in really dry, grassy areas, you need to pay attention. When you go shooting, I go and I bring a shovel and I bring a fire extinguisher for this type of thing. Because I've been out there where a hot brass landed in some dry stuff and it tried to start smoldering and start a fire, and I'd rather snuff that out than lose thousands of acres and risk human lives because of a forest fire that happens here. On that same tangent, I always talk about being prepared, as being a steward of the 2A and, being a concealed carry person, being a first responder, your own first responder. Do you have a go bag? The first instance of emergency operations and for the federal government ever started wasn't 9/11. It was actually a forest fire in Colorado, I believe. And if it wasn't in Colorado, it was another forest fire. Forest fires happen in the Southwest. This isn't a new thing. We know it. We live it. We see it. We see the smoke. This is the time of year it happens, and it's always tragic. We lose thousands of acres every year of public land and BLM land because of fires, and it's usually caused by someone doing something stupid, or it's caused by power lines being knocked down from the wind because, New Mexico is pretty windy this time of year also, and it's really hot and dry, so it doesn't take a lot to start a fire. But having a go bag, they have evacuated an entire town of 10,000 people, and it's swole because this is the time of year where people are going out and doing those recreational activities like hiking and like seeing nature. So there's tourists in this area too. And in New Mexico and Colorado specifically, there's a lot of cattlemen and there's a lot of ranchers that are out there that have their wildlife, their animals, that is their livelihood. So when we have these huge forest fires, you need to think about what you'd have to do to, one, evacuate on a moment's notice, Two, be able to communicate where you are, because your family's going to be terrified and worried about who you are, where you're at, where you're doing. Are you okay? Are you safe? And being able to sustain yourself for, at least 72 hours, maybe a week, where you're not going to be able to get back to where you were. If they evacuated your entire town because of a forest fire, and believe me, it happens in New Mexico. It's happened in Ruidoso. It's happened several places. Happened in a little bit of outside of Santa Fe. If they evacuate you, you're going to have to probably deal with being in a shelter for a while if you can't stay with family or friends. Do you have the stuff to take care of yourself? Do you have the stuff to take care of your animals? Do you have it in a collected one place where you grab it and go? There's a lot of survivalists, a lot of preppers that talk about a go bag, but the real practicality is, do you actually have one that you can use in a situation like this? Because this is very present right now. Because of the Ruidoso fire, a lot of people are thinking about their emergency preparedness for themselves. I live in the city of Farmington. I don't foresee them evacuating the entire 40 to 50,000 people in New Mexico, in Farmington, New Mexico, but I could definitely see them evacuating entire sections of the city, because we are surrounded by very heavy, densely vegetated areas, especially along the river, and with the homeless populations. We've seen a couple not forest fires, a couple fires here along the river walk here in New Mexico and Farmington, New Mexico, because of homeless people using fire irresponsibly when the wind hits, and it causes the fire to spread. Only you can prevent idiots from starting forest fires. Only you can defend and protect yourself. And, take this with a grain of salt or however you want to. I recommend you have a go bag that has enough food, water, clothing resources, personal care items for you, your family, and your animals, to where if you have to leave, you can do it at a moment's notice. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.